My mom told family, one son makes us proud, the other plays with books like a child. What she didn't know is the so-called child had built a career bigger than her pride, until my brother's fiance Googled my name and the truth spilled out. Hey Reddit, so I never thought I'd be the type to post on here, but after the last couple months with my family, I feel like I need to get it off my chest. Let's just say being the other kid in a house where your brother is the golden boy does things to you. I always kept quiet, played it cool, figured patience would pay off someday. And oh man, it finally did, just not in the way anyone expected. So I'm Ethan, 32 male, and if you ask my family what I do for a living, you'd probably get something vague like, oh, he works with books or computers or something. Basically, the family narrative is, I'm the nobody son, the filler child. My brother Daniel is the star, and my mom Maggie is his personal hype woman. My dad Richard, well, he just kind of sits in the corner pretending the house is peaceful while Rome burns. I learned pretty early that in my family, there's a clear seating chart in life. Daniel sits dead center under a spotlight. Mom claps, dad nods, and I'm at the far end of the table both literally and metaphorically. Like, no exaggeration. Even at family dinners, my chair was always at the furthest edge. The you're here, but let's not make it obvious seat. One of my earliest memories of realizing how the pecking order worked was when I was around 8. I had just written this short story about a kid who could talk to animals. My teacher gave me an A+ and wrote, "Extraordinary imagination" in big red letters. I was pumped, came home waving it like it was a golden ticket. Mom barely glanced at it. She literally said, "That's nice, Ethan, but Daniel's got his science fair tonight. Don't distract us." The paper ended up shoved on the kitchen counter, coffee stain across the top by the time I saw it again. Meanwhile, Daniel's half-working volcano project got its own framed picture on the wall. I remember once at a family BBQ, some distant relative asked me what I was into. You know, just making conversation. And before I could even answer, Mom chimed in with, "Oh, Ethan just reads all day. Doesn't do sports like Danny. He was never the athletic one." Then she laughed like it was some adorable flaw of mine. Everyone else laughed along, and I just stood there holding a paper plate of hot dogs like, cool, glad I'm the punchline again. People always ask why I didn't just fight harder for attention. The truth? You learn patterns. When you get shot down enough times, you stop offering them ammo. By the time I was a teenager, I had trained myself to stay quiet. At the dinner table, I learned to keep answers short and sarcastic, because if you tried to be genuine, it just got steamrolled by, "Guess what Daniel did?" And look, I don't want to paint myself like some sob story kid hiding in the shadows. I wasn't pathetic. I was observant. Smart enough to realize energy spent begging for validation from people who refused to give it was wasted energy. So yeah, I developed a sarcastic edge early. If they were going to treat me like background noise, fine. I'd at least be the background noise with the best comebacks. That's basically how I survived growing up in that house. Quick remarks, thick skin, and low expectations. You'd think by adulthood I'd be used to it, but the thing about family is they don't let you out of the role they cast you in. You can move across the country, build your own life, and to them you're still the kid with his nose in a book. So when Daniel got engaged and invited me back to Ohio for the big family dinner, I already knew how it would go. Mom would parade Daniel and his fiancée around like royalty. Dad would nod politely. And me? I'd be sitting at the edge of the table like always, probably getting asked what office job I was doing these days. And you know what? I didn't mind. Because I knew something they didn't. Let's just say this. What they didn't know about me was huge. And I wasn't about to tell them either. Let them believe I was the nobody son. I was fine letting them underestimate me. Sometimes the best revenge is patience. And patience was about to pay off. Because the day I left Ohio for New York, I basically slammed the door on being the nobody son. I didn't have much. 2 suitcases, a beat-up laptop, and a scholarship check that barely covered tuition. But I had one thing my family never gave me. The belief that I could make something out of myself without needing their approval. New York smacked me in the face the first week. Rent was brutal. My apartment in Brooklyn was basically a shoebox with 3 roommates. And the guy in the next unit played drums at 2 a.m., like he was auditioning for Metallica. I was broke enough that I used to skip the subway just to save cash and walk 40 minutes to class. Still, I didn't complain. I saw it like training camp. You can't write about struggle if you've never struggled. And believe me, I was struggling. 8 months in, something finally cracked open. A small literary magazine offered me an assistant job. The pay was garbage, but it wasn't coffee. I said yes instantly. That's where I met Eleanor Montgomery, the editor. She was legendary in the publishing world. The kind of woman whose one-sentence rejection letter could ruin your week. Everyone was terrified of her. I wasn't, though. Maybe because I'd already grown up with someone like that. Maggie, my mom. After her, Eleanor felt like a breeze. One day during lunch, I was scribbling out a story. Eleanor walked by, picked it up without asking, and read it. She squinted at me like she was deciding whether I was worth her time. Then she said, "You've got a voice. Rough, but it's there. Keep writing." And she just walked off. Coming from her, that was like Zeus handing you lightning. She wasn't nice. She didn't coddle. If she said I had something, I believed it. So I wrote. Every night. Even when I had no ideas. Even when I felt like a fraud. Some nights I'd fall asleep at the desk, wake up with keyboard marks on my face, and go back at it. Eleanor would tear my drafts apart with her red pen, and I'd fix them. I learned discipline, not inspiration. Inspiration was for kids. Discipline was for people who wanted to actually make it. The first real yes came 2 years in. A short story I wrote got published in a respected journal. When I saw my name in print, I bought 5 copies. I even mailed one home to Ohio, thinking maybe this time they'd care. I should have known better. Not a word back. Next holiday visit, I asked casually if they got it. Mom said, "Oh yeah, a package came. I think it's in the guest room." Didn't really look at it. Sure enough, it was there, still sealed. That's when I got the message. I gave it one last shot when my debut dropped. Mailed a box with 3 signed copies. And after that, I stopped chasing. If they couldn't be bothered to crack a package with my name on it, then fine. I'd build a whole career without them even noticing. And I did. Slowly, painfully, but steadily. I kept my head down, grinding. My writing got sharper. I started publishing more. Editors began recognizing my name. A literary agent even reached out, asking if I was working on a book. I played it cool, said I was thinking about it. Truth was, I'd already been writing a collection of short stories. Took me 3 years to finish it, balancing the job, the rent, the noise of the city, and my own doubts. I didn't tell my family a word. To them, I was still the son in New York with some job in publishing. And I let them think that. Why correct them? They weren't listening anyway. By the time I finally landed a deal with an independent publisher, I was 27. The New Yorker put me on their writers to watch list. I was on cloud 9, but when the holidays rolled around and I called home, Mom still asked the same thing. "So are you still at that little magazine?" I said, "Something like that," and changed the subject. What was I supposed to do? Beg her to care? No thanks. By now, I had built 2 versions of myself. Ethan in New York, respected writer, building something real. And Ethan in Ohio, the background son, invisible at family dinners. It was frustrating, sure, but I didn't hate it. If anything, it became a weapon. The more they underestimated me, the easier it was to just do my thing. I wasn't weighed down by their expectations. No one was breathing down my neck, monitoring every step. Unlike Daniel, who had Mom cheering from the sidelines at every meeting and golf game, I had freedom, and I used it. I didn't know it then, but all those years of silence, all those unopened packages and ignored phone calls were leading up to something, a collision. My quiet success in New York was eventually going to slam headfirst into the Cole family bubble in Ohio, and that collision was coming sooner than I thought. My first book had only been out for a couple months when they put me on a mini book tour. Nothing glamorous, mostly small bookstores and college auditoriums that smelled like old carpet. But to me, it felt like I'd finally kicked open a door everyone said would stay shut. The split between my New York life and Ohio life was wild. One week I was speaking on a panel at a university. The next I was back in Ohio, crammed at the far end of the table. Basically the overflow spot with the younger cousins, while Daniel got prime seating with the real adults. My plate had the same reheated turkey and boxed stuffing as everyone else. But the message was clear. I was still background noise. I cracked a joke about my promotion in seating, but of course nobody heard me. Honestly, sitting with the cousins wasn't that bad. At least they weren't droning on about mortgage rates all night. Christmas wasn't much different. One of my uncles asked what I was doing in New York, and before I could even open my mouth, Mom cut in, "He's nobody worth mentioning. Honestly, if he weren't my son, I'd forget he even exists. Daniel's the one carrying this family's name." The table broke into applause, like she'd just delivered a campaign speech. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Yep, nobody. Just a ghost paying New York rent and somehow getting books published. Dangerous life, never know when a paperback might attack." My uncle chuckled under his breath, but Mom shot me the classic "stop embarrassing us" glare, like I hadn't just been publicly downgraded to invisible. Daniel loved it. He always had some new brag. Car, Gym, work conference. He once talked 20 straight minutes about a business trip to Miami. I told him, "Careful, Dan. Don't let the sun melt your PowerPoint." He gave me his fake laugh and kept going. By then, my second book was rolling, my calendar was packed, and New York actually felt like home. I was already knee-deep drafting a third, slow but steady. Didn't talk about it with anyone back home, of course. But when I went back for Mom's birthday, guess what she asked? "Have you thought about teaching at the community college? That would be stable." I almost spit out my cake. "Yeah, Mom. Waiting for them to offer me tenure and Intro to Crayola 101. She just nodded, serious. Then came Daniel's big call. "I proposed to Sophia," he said, like he'd invented marriage. I told him, "Congrats, man. Does she know she signed up for late-night tax law lectures?" He groaned, but he was smiling through the phone. The family threw a casual dinner to celebrate, which meant rented chairs, a caterer, and Mom acting like Sophia was royalty. Her family's from Shaker Heights, educated, refined. Her father's in medicine, she said, like the guy had invented the human spine. I asked what Sophia actually did, and Mom waved it off. Events. But her family is important. Translation? Money. I sat through 3 hours of Daniel retelling his proposal like it was a Broadway show. Mom ate up every word. Dad nodded like background music. I kept count of how many times Daniel said, "partner." 12. By the end, Mom announced the official engagement dinner with Sophia's family. It'll be proper. Important families should meet properly. Important families. I didn't even bother asking which table I'd get this time. My money was on the one next to the kitchen door. Driving back to my hotel, I laughed to myself. They still thought I was the guy barely scraping by with bookwork. And I let them. Being underestimated was basically my superpower. But that power-up was about to run out. That moment, closer than any of them realized. Mom turned our house into a showroom. Fresh hydrangeas by the door, rental chairs, polished silver that only sees daylight when a proper family is visiting. She even swapped the hallway photos, so Daniel's face hit you from every angle. College shot, golf trophy, the one where he holds a certificate like it's a newborn. The dining room looked expensive and uncomfortable. Long table, white cloth, too many forks. Place cards, of course. Daniel and Sophia dead center under the chandelier. Mom on Daniel's right, Dad on Sophia's left. My card sat down by the swinging kitchen door. Prime wind tunnel. I could literally see the pantry. "Ethan," Mom said, gliding over in pearls. "Try not to slouch. This is important." She eyed my blazer. "I suppose that will do." "Happy to meet your minimum standard," I said. I ironed it with my mind. She didn't laugh. Points to me. Guests filtered in fast. Sophia's parents, her aunt with the loud perfume, 2 neighbors Mom calls good people because they own a boat. Daniel did the greetings like a campaign stop. Big handshake, humble head tilt, ring flash. He's good at looking important without saying anything. We started with tiny appetizers you have to chase around the plate. Mom launched her opening act before the server cleared the first tray. "Daniel just got promoted," she told Sophia's dad, voice bright. "They practically begged him. He's indispensable." She dabbed her napkin like she'd just delivered breaking news. Sophia's dad smiled. Daniel straightened his tie a millimeter. I reached for another appetizer and missed. Story of my childhood. Soup came next. Mom rolled into stats. "He's already training new associates. His partners rely on him for strategy. He's always had that mind." She tapped her temple. Then, like a reflex, her eyes slid down the table to me. "Ethan, well, he's in New York." "Still is," I said. "City hasn't moved." She ignored it and pivoted back to Daniel. Safe territory. Sophia's mom asked about the wedding timeline. Daniel leaned back like a CEO on a panel. "We're locking the venue this week," he said. "We want the atmosphere to reflect our values. Clean, modern, intentional." He actually said intentional. I sipped water to hide my face. Sophia nodded, glowing. To be fair, she looked happy. And she kept glancing down the table at me like she was trying to place where she'd seen me. Not suspicious. Curious. Bread landed. I took the end piece. Perks of the wind tunnel. A neighbor asked about the honeymoon. Daniel had a slideshow ready, verbally. 2 weeks in Italy. We're prioritizing experiences. He said prioritizing like he was drafting a quarterly plan. "Don't forget to prioritize sunscreen," I said. "The sun out there is undefeated." A couple smirks. Mom's eyebrow did that warning twitch. Salad. More flexing. "Daniel's condo has a skyline view," Mom told Sophia's aunt. "He negotiated the price down himself. His financial sense is unmatched," I finished for her. "The man once got a free pen at a bank." Daniel smirked like he won that negotiation too. Sophia's dad turned to me, polite. And what do you do, Ethan? I inhaled to answer. Mom cut in on beat. He's nothing like Daniel. One son makes us proud, the other plays with books like a child. Sugar voice. Knife edge. I raised my glass like a toast. To playing with books like a child. Somehow the crayons pay rent. A few nervous chuckles, but most people went straight back to the Daniel highlight reel. Main course hit. Steak. Excellent. I focused on that for a minute while Mom ran through Daniel's college story for the 1,000th time. The one where he turned down an internship because it didn't look long-term enough. It always gets applause. Tonight was no different. Dad finally chimed in. He's not a talker, but he tries. Daniel's team goes to him for tough calls, he said, proud. Good leadership. True, I said. He's led many conversations past the 30-minute mark. Daniel grinned like I complimented him. Bless. Mid-meal, Mom did a circle to check on everyone. Translation. Make sure the narrative stays on script. She paused behind me. Ethan, napkin in your lap. You're not at a cafeteria. Good catch, I said, dropping it ceremonially. Wouldn't want the bread to feel disrespected. She moved on, satisfied. Sophia's dad tried me again. New York must be exciting. Tough field, though, publishing. Competitive, I said. Crowded, still fun. Mom couldn't let it breathe. Exactly. It's a phase. He'll settle down once he finds something solid. Daniel's path is intentional, I said. Stable, she finished, sharper now. Sophia's eyes flicked between us. She wasn't dumb. She could feel the pecking order. She also didn't look like she loved it. Plates cleared, chairs scraped, people stretched and drifted toward the living room. Mom intercepted me in the hallway, voice low. Don't be flippant with Sophia's family. It reflects on us. Good news, I said. I was being flippant with you. She stared like she missed the joke on purpose. Just don't make it about you. No risk of that here, I said, and stepped aside so the server could pass. Back in the dining room, I helped the server stack plates. Habit. The guy looked grateful. Mom saw and frowned, like helping staff was off-brand for the night. Then she went right back to narrating Daniel's rise to whoever was closest. From my seat near the door, I could see everything. Daniel centered, Sophia beside him, parents orbiting, neighbors nodding, crystal shining. It was the family photo they always wanted. Me blurred at the edge. Honestly, I didn't mind. The air was cooler down there. The bread reached me first, and I didn't owe anyone a performance. Sophia glanced down the table one more time. Thoughtful look, like a tab left open in her head. Then she went back to fielding questions about flowers and seating charts. I leaned back, let the draft hit my face, and smiled into my coffee. Let them think what they want. Tonight was theirs. That's when I noticed Sophia. She was polite all dinner, but every time my mom dismissed me with her, "He just does something with books" line, Sophia's eyes lingered on me. Not in a wow mysterious kind of way, but more like when you recognize an actor in a commercial but can't place where from. That nagging itch. She pulled out her phone under the tablecloth, subtle, like she was texting. But she wasn't scrolling with both thumbs. She was typing carefully, searching. I knew exactly what she was doing the second her eyebrows lifted. Google had just walked into the party. Her thumb froze on the screen. She blinked twice, leaned back like her chair suddenly got taller, and then glanced at me again. Slower this time. And then she smiled. Small at first, then bigger. Guys? She said, voice light but loud enough to stop Mom mid-Daniel brag. Can we pause for a second? Everyone turned. Forks hovered. Daniel stopped mid-sentence about artisanal centerpieces. Sophia held up her phone like it was evidence. So, is this you? She angled the screen toward me. On it was my author photo. Black and white headshot. My name right there. Ethan Cole. Right next to it, reviews, book covers, an article calling me one of the most compelling new voices of the decade. The table went dead quiet. Daniel squinted. Mom's mouth actually fell open. Dad adjusted his glasses like the pixels might change if he squinted harder. Sophia laughed. Full laugh, not polite. Ethan, why didn't you say anything? Mom cut in sharp. That's not him. He just writes little stories. She sounded almost panicked, like she needed the narrative back on script. Sophia tilted her phone closer. Margaret, it literally is him. Look, same last name, his picture, interviews, published books. There's even a video of him at a panel. Dad finally spoke. A panel? Like, at a library? No, Sophia said, eyes still locked on me. Like a televised panel, in New York, for award-winning authors. Daniel let out a short laugh, the kind where you're stalling. Okay, let's be serious. This is just a mix-up. Tons of Ethan Coles out there. I drummed my fingers on the table. You're right, Dan. What are the odds another Ethan Cole who looks exactly like me, lives in New York, and writes books happen to be interviewed by the Times? Wild coincidence. A neighbor leaned in. Wait, your son's an author? Like, famous? Mom stiffened. He never told us this. He exaggerates. Actually, I said, pointing with my fork, I did tell you once. Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. You asked if I was done playing with writing. I said, one of my stories is going into print. You said, and I quote, pass the cranberry sauce. A couple cousins choked on laughs. Mom's face went red. Sophia, scrolling again, read out loud, winner of the Critics Circle Fiction Award. Featured in the New Yorker. Debut novel sold international rights. Upcoming adaptation and development. She looked up, eyes wide. How is this not something you brag about every 5 seconds? I shrugged. I tried bragging once. Didn't get past the cranberry sauce blockade. Daniel finally snapped, leaning forward. So what? You're some writer guy? That doesn't mean anything in the real world. People need lawyers, not stories. I cut him off. Funny, because last I checked, your fiancé is geeking out because she Googled me and found half a Wikipedia page. Sophia hid her grin behind her glass. Mom wasn't giving in. Ethan, enough. If this was true, why wouldn't you share it with your family? We could have supported you. Oh yeah, the famous Cole support system, I said, deadpan. Like when you sat me at the kids' table side? Honestly, that was an upgrade. No one at the kids' table side asked me when I'd get a real job. Plus, they traded me Jell-O cups for bread rolls. Prime economy. That cracked the neighbors. Even Dad's lip twitched. Sophia scrolled more. There are literally pictures of you at signings with lines of people. Ethan, you're kind of a big deal. Daniel muttered, anybody can self-publish these days. True, I said, but apparently not everybody can get optioned for film rights, win awards, and land on college reading lists. Weird, huh? Silence. Thick enough you could butter it. Mom tried again, softer this time. Ethan, if this is all true, why didn't you think we deserved to know? I met her eyes, calm. Because every time I tried to talk about writing, you changed the subject to Daniel. Eventually, I stopped wasting breath. Turns out, Google listens better than you do. That hit. You could feel it land. Sophia reached across the table like she was Team Me. Well, I think it's incredible. You've done all this on your own. Respect. I raised my glass toward her. Cheers. At least somebody Googled me before writing me off. Daniel's jaw tightened. Mom's pearls nearly cracked under the pressure of her hand. Dad looked like he wanted to crawl into his coffee. Me? I sat back, relaxed. Years of swallowing their dismissal boiled down to this single, delicious moment where the truth got served without me lifting a finger. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Dinner wrapped up like someone had hit a mute button on half the table. Forks scraped plates, glasses clinked, but the chatter was gone. Everyone was pretending to enjoy dessert, but the tension sat there, thick, like smoke after a bad fireworks show. Mom was the first to break. Of course she was. This doesn't change anything, she said, chin up like she was lecturing a courtroom. Writing a few books doesn't mean you understand real life. Daniel is still the one carrying the weight. I leaned back in my chair, calm. Sure, Mom, carrying the weight of his own ego. That's heavy enough. Her face tightened. Don't be smug. You always had that sarcastic tone. You think it makes you clever. It just makes you rude. Funny, I said, picking at my cheesecake. I thought it made me honest. Must have been misusing it all these years. The cousins chuckled, but Dad didn't. He looked tired, worn out. He fiddled with his fork before finally setting it down. Enough, he said, voice low. Ethan's right. We were wrong. That made the whole table still again. Mom blinked at him like he'd grown another head. Excuse me? Dad sighed. He looked at me, actually looked at me, not through me like I was wallpaper. I should have seen it. You worked hard. You built something and we ignored it. That wasn't fair. I was too focused on Daniel. Too proud. I'm sorry. It landed harder than I thought it would. Not because I needed it. I'd stopped looking for their approval a long time ago. But hearing him actually say the words, that was something. I gave him a small nod. Well, didn't think I'd ever get one of those. Better late than never, huh? Daniel shifted in his seat, face red. He didn't say anything for a while, which was rare. He just sat there, probably realizing every smug dig he'd thrown at me over the years now looked pathetic in front of Sophia, in front of everyone. Sophia, though, she was the only one smiling. Honestly, I've actually read your first 2 books. On Kindle, covers off, Never checked the author photo. Ethan Cole sounded common. I only connected it when I saw your face at dinner. I loved them. You've got real talent. Not everyone can say they've created something people actually connect with. Daniel's jaw almost hit the table. What? You never told me that. She just shrugged, calm as ever. Didn't come up. That one nearly made me laugh out loud. Daniel, the golden boy, upstaged by his fiancée who was openly admiring me in front of the entire family. You couldn't script this better. Mom tried to regain ground, quick. Sophia, that's sweet, but we don't want to inflate his head. Writing is fine, but it's not stability. Mom, Sophia said, sharper than I expected. He's more stable than half the lawyers I know. He's built a whole career doing what he loves. That's rare. You should be proud. Mom looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Dad stayed quiet, but he didn't argue with her. He just kept his eyes down, like the fight had drained out of him. Weeks later, I figured the dust had settled. That's when I got a package in the mail. Inside were the 3 signed copies I'd mailed the week my debut dropped. Spines finally creased, a couple pages dog-eared. Tucked inside was a folded note. Dad's handwriting messy but deliberate. Ethan, you were right. I should have read these before. I'm proud of you. Sorry for being blind for so long. Dad. I stared at that note longer than I expected. Didn't frame it or anything cheesy like that, but yeah, I kept it. Small wins. A week after that, Daniel texted me. Nothing dramatic, just hey, how's New York treating you? But considering the last 15 years of our relationship were 90% smug remarks and one-up contests, that little olive branch said more than he realized. I didn't gush back, just shot him a sarcastic, still surviving without law school somehow. He didn't fire back. Progress. And Mom? Oh, she came around too, in her own twisted way. A cousin called me and said Mom had been talking me up at her book club. My son, the author, she was apparently saying, lives in New York. Very successful. The same woman who once told me writing was a phase had apparently turned me into her bragging point. Give her a week and a fresh audience, and she pivoted like a PR team. 1 minute I was a phase, the next I was her headline act. Funny how fast not a real career turned into, look what my son achieved. I didn't rub it in, didn't need to. The shift was already happening. Daniel wasn't the untouchable golden child anymore. Dad finally cracked the shell and admitted he'd been wrong. Even Mom, through gritted teeth, couldn't keep pretending I was just the extra kid who did something with books. For once, I wasn't the punchline at the table, and I hadn't said a word about my success. They found out on their own. They felt the weight of it on their own. I leaned back in my chair one night in my New York apartment, phone buzzing with Daniel's half-nice texts, Mom's reluctant attempts at pride, Dad's quiet note tucked in a drawer. Power dynamic? Yeah, it had flipped. And the best part? I didn't lift a finger to force it. They did that themselves. The engagement party was nothing like the dinners before. I could feel it the second I walked in. No kid's side of the table for me, no half-hearted greetings, no subtle digs about Daniel being the chosen one. Instead, Mom was already at the door with her arms wide, practically dragging me toward the crowd. There he is, she said, beaming. Our son, the author. Not Ethan, not the other one. Suddenly, I had a title. And man, she said it like she was announcing the mayor had arrived. Inside, the place was dressed up like a wedding rehearsal. String lights, flowers everywhere, the whole 9 yards. Usually at these things, I got shoved toward the edges, near the weird uncle who only talked about lawnmowers. This time, my name card was at the main table, right between Mom and Dad. Daniel sat beside Sophia, of course, but directly across from me, fiddling with his tie like he'd rather be anywhere else. When guests started arriving, Mom was parading me around like I was the centerpiece. This is Ethan, she told anyone within earshot. Our son, the author, lives in New York. Some people nodded politely. Others looked genuinely impressed. One lady even said, "Oh, I've heard of that book," which nearly made Daniel choke on his drink. The funniest part, Mom was glowing like she had discovered me herself, like I was some lost family antique she dusted off and decided to show off for the first time. Halfway through dinner, Dad stood up, tapping his glass. Normally, his speeches were just 5 minutes of bragging about Daniel's grades, career, or golf swing, but this time he cleared his throat and said, "Tonight's not just about Daniel and Sophia's future. It's also about family, and one person in particular deserves recognition. Ethan." The room turned. I won't lie, my first thought was, oh, here we go. He's about to set me up for some backhanded compliment. But instead, he went on, "Your mother and I are proud of what you've built. We didn't say it enough, maybe didn't say it at all, but tonight we want to. You've made your own path, and that matters. Sophia smiled at me. Daniel forced a grin that looked like it hurt. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Dramatic as always. But this time it wasn't a show of anger or disapproval. She actually looked proud. Then she hit me with it. Ethan, would you maybe share something from one of your books? That one nearly knocked me back in my chair. For years, she'd brushed them off as just stories. Now she wanted a reading, like it was open mic night. So I pulled out a copy, because yes, I carry one sometimes, sue me, and flipped to a short passage I knew would land. I read it slow, clear. The room stayed quiet the whole time. When I finished, there was actual applause. People clapped at a family gathering where I wasn't the punchline. That alone deserved a trophy. Even Mom was teary-eyed. Beautiful, she whispered, squeezing my hand like she hadn't spent half my life downplaying me. Dad nodded. That's talent. Pure talent. Daniel, though? He just shifted uncomfortably, the applause washing right over him. For once, he wasn't the guy everyone circled around. He wasn't the star of the show, and judging by the tight look on his face, he knew it. Later, as the party wound down, Sophia came over. I meant what I said before, Ethan. You've built something incredible. Daniel's lucky to have you as a brother, whether he admits it or not. I smirked. Careful. If you say nice things about me too often, you'll get disinvited from family dinners. She laughed, but her eyes said she wasn't joking about the support. It was genuine. On the ride back to my apartment, I thought about the shift. I hadn't chased it. I didn't bend myself into someone I wasn't to earn their nods. I didn't beg for attention or wave my success in their faces. I built my life, piece by piece, miles away from them. And yet here I was, finally visible in their eyes. It didn't mean I needed their approval. That ship had sailed years ago. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't satisfying to watch them realize who I was, without me having to spell it out. So yeah, it took an engagement party, a Google search, and a couple of speeches to turn things around. Mom was bragging, Dad was apologizing, Daniel was quiet for once. And me? I was the same guy I'd always been. As I kicked off my shoes that night and tossed the suit jacket over the chair, I couldn't help but laugh. Guess it took Google, I muttered, to do what my parents never could. Notice me. And honestly, that was enough.